John Jay, one of America's founding fathers and America's first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, first attempted to abolish slavery in New York in 1777. In 1788, the state banned the importation of slaves. By 1799, the New York Manumission Society advocated for a bill signed into law that year by then-Governor Jay, specifying that as of July 4th, all children born to slave parents would be freed by a certain age. When slavery in New York finally was abolished in 1827, only 11% of the black population was affected and therefore freed. The founders understood that you couldn't have freedom and liberty living side by side with slavery, and they also understood the long road of politics, and when changing society, things take time. He wanted this to go quicker, and did his best to speed up the process. In June of 1788, Jay wrote a letter to his British counterparts, talking about why anti-slavery progress in America is too slow. Permit us, however, to observe that although consequences ought not to deter us from doing what is right, yet that it is not easy to persuade men in general to act on that magnanimous and disinterested principle. It is well known that errors, either in opinion or practice, long entertained or indulged, are difficult to eradicate, and particularly so when they have become, as it were, incorporated in the civil institutions and domestic economy of a whole people. Prior to the Great Revolution, the great majority, or rather, the great body of our people, had been so long accustomed to the practice and convenience of having slaves, that very few among them ever doubted the propriety and rectitude of it. Some liberal and conscientious men had, indeed, by their conduct and writings, drawn the lawfulness of slavery into question, and they made converts to that opinion. But the number of those converts compared with the people at large was then very inconsiderable. Their doctrines prevailed by almost insensible degrees, and was like the little lump of leaven which put into 3 measures of meal. Even at this day, the whole mass is far from being leavened, though we have good reason to hope and to believe that if the natural operations of truth are constantly watched and assisted, but not forced and precipitated, that end we all aim at will finally be attained in this country. The convention which formed and recommended the new Constitution had an arduous task to perform, especially as local interests, in some measure local prejudices, were to be accommodated. Several of the states conceived that restraints on slavery might be too rapid to consist with their particular circumstances, and the importance of union rendered it necessary that their wishes on that head should, in some degree, be gratified. It gives us pleasure to inform you that a disposition favorable to our views and wishes prevails more and more, and that it has already had an influence on our own laws. When it is considered how many of the legislators in the different states are proprietors of slaves, and what opinions and prejudices they have imbibed on the subject from their infancy, a sudden and total stop to this species of oppression is not to be expected. The founders understood that slavery should not and could not exist in the United States, as they had fought so hard for and believed in liberty and freedom. To me, this shows how true the founders were to the words of the Declaration of Independence. They did their best to abolish slavery. It took a civil war and hundreds of thousands of deaths, but a civil war was exactly what the founders wanted to avoid. They would have preferred a slow graduation of laws that slowly outlawed and then banned slavery forever. To criticize the founders for allowing slavery not to take political, cultural, social, economic, and other factors into account is being ignorant of human nature, history, and shows a general lack of critical thinking.